What is up, everyone? I am TST's the Mudman, and it's time to figure out what we are going to play this weekend ranked in Gods Unchained. So we're on gudex.com looking at the Mythic meta over the past 7 days by God popularity. And it's been a little while since we've had any balance patches, so the meta is very similar to how it was last week. Deception is still the best deck. However, over the course of the last 7 days, the meta has evolved a bit. There are a few budding archetypes that are becoming more popular. So we'll go over those, as they come up. But let's just talk about the most common archetypes for each god, so you know what you'll be facing when you face each god. So Deception, the strongest god and the most popular god. Obviously, their best archetype is Aggro Deception. Usually, Aggro Deception with some sort of little guild package inside. They have lots of hidden creatures. They have lots of attack buff cards. They have a lot of stat steal stuff. They are incredibly strong, very hard to deal with. Aggro Deception, incredibly powerful. It's been the best for the past couple of weeks. The next most popular god is Magic, which is very versatile. Currently, the most popular and most successful Magic builds are these weird, hybrid-y Magic decks that sort of take pieces from the combo decks and the control decks and the tempo decks and sort of just smush them all together, and somehow it works very successfully. It's a very interesting archetype. Then for Nature, Nature is predominantly, a very aggressive wild nature. However, a lot of people have been experimenting with Amazons over this past week, so when you run into Nature, it'll probably be the normal old wild, play Marshwalker Nature, but there's a chance you run into some Amazon-type stuff. Light's always, light. You're gonna run into Zoo 90% of the time. Control Light is becoming more and more popular with every week, except, it's nowhere near as popular as the normal Zoo aggro light decks. Death is interesting. The most popular death archetype is definitely still the Anubian or Heirloom Death, whatever you want to call it. However, as of last week, Board Wipe Death has jumped back to the top for the death archetypes. And War is the final and least popular god of the week. However, War is probably the god that's been jumping in popularity the most over these past 7 days. War decks are always relic-centric decks, like mid-rangey, control-ish decks with blitz creatures, relics, removal spells, and then they use cards like Unrestrained Power, as well as things like Whetstone to buff up their relic exponentially and deal 20 to 30 damage in one turn, lots of damage. And a lot of players have been experimenting with this relic-themed war deck. A lot of players have a very high win rate, and it's really, really increased in popularity over the past couple of days. But now that we have done this little brief overview of all the most popular archetypes, let's jump into some specific deck lists that you might want to play over this weekend. Alright, so the first archetype I want to go over is Aggro Deception. Like I said in the beginning of the video, this is the best archetype. It's been the best archetype for the past couple of weeks. We're not going to go over it in great detail because, like I said, it's been the best archetype for a couple of weeks. It's not the most complicated deck. You play lots of creatures with high attack. They're hidden, so they're hard to interact with. You can buff their attack with things like Dark Knives or Selfless Guildmates or Ludian Thespian, sorry. The only real, strange-ish cards in this deck is we have Madame Denholm, which is a 3-mana 1/2 with hidden. At the end of your turn, you summon a 1/1 Rogue Skulker, which is, fairly decent card. Having infinite creatures is always, adequate. It also pairs very nicely with your Reflection Elementalist, as well as your Uncanny Rogue for some deadly action, or just some turning a dinky little 1/1 Skulker into a great big, warded creature. And then besides that, you're just doing deception stuff. You're dealing a lot of damage, you're stealing your opponent's cards with Umbra Arrow and Bound by Her Will, and you're winning games very, very quickly. If you want to do it successfully this weekend and you want to do it quick, then Aggro Deception is definitely the deck for you. So now that we've finished talking about the most popular god in Deception, let's move on to the least popular god in War. If you remember from the beginning of the video, I noted how this archetype was becoming much, much more popular this past week, so I don't think it would be ridiculous to run into a lot of different war decks. Maybe you want to play some Relic war decks over this weekend ranked event. Nakarub here has played 42 games with this list with a 76% win rate, and 83 people overall have played this list with a 72% win rate, which goes to show that this list is very consistent. One thing I want to mention before I forget, Nakarub here uses the Slayer God power in every single matchup except for Light, where he picks Valka's Presence, so keep that in mind. Against Light, you want the extra tempo as opposed to the damage, especially if it's Control Light and your God power deals 2 and there's heals 2, it's just redundant. But let's talk more about this archetype a bit. This archetype uses or utilizes a lot of power cards, and it uses cards like Mobilize to really make the combo flourish. This is a 2-mana card. It reduces the cost of empower cards in your hand by 1, and then empower 3, making it a 5-mana card. You can draw 3 cards first. So you draw a bunch of cards in your deck. This is sort of a combo-ishy deck. You need multiple cards in combination to make it work, so drawing 3 cards is great. A lot of your key cards for that combo, namely Unrestrained Power, is an Empower card, so you can reduce the cost of it, making it easier to play and making it easier to combine with things like Whetstone. So let's jump into the Unrestrained Power. This is a 2-mana spell. It gives your relic +2 strength, or Empower 3, making it a 5-mana card altogether. It doubles the strength of your relic, so it gives it +2 and then doubles it. Obviously, doubling the power of your relic can equal insane amounts of damage, can easily beat your opponents. It's not ridiculous to deal 20 damage in one turn. Let's see, we have I Need a Weapon, another important card for this deck. This draws a relic from your deck. It also gives a +1/+1, which compounds when you're doubling something's attack. Let's see, and besides that, we have lots of control tools. We have 2 copies of Bar Fight, 2 copies of Savage Strike, both really good for dealing with Deception's hidden as well as 1-health boards. We have Magic Missile Launcher, which is also good at interacting with hidden creatures. Not attacking hidden creatures, of course, but its Afterlife, dealing 2 damage, is good for those hidden creatures. Also, the 4 life that you heal upon this relic's destruction is also convenient for a little bit of sustain power. Obviously, we have Carnage Sweep in here, which is great for just removing any board. Also, it's important to note that Aggro Deception is the most common archetype. Their creatures almost never have more than 2 health, so just naked Carnage Sweep with no relic equipped is often enough AoE to clear your opponent's board. But if they play something big like a Guild Enforcer, Carnage Sweep's one of your few answers to something like that. Let's see, we have Orcish Elite. That's self-explanatory. This is a single card that can trade away 2 creatures and maybe survive afterwards. It's very powerful. In the neutral slots, we have Vanguard Axewoman, so you can destroy your opponent's creatures, survive long enough to get your combo pieces, and deal those last bits of damage. And finally, Demo, so you can beat your burn magic opponents. If you can survive long enough against Aggro Deception to hit 7 mana, plopping down the Demo could win you the game. Essentially speaking, this deck has been, people have been experimenting with it a lot this past week. It's been doing very, very well. And when you're playing against this deck, one thing that's important to note is you would imagine the best thing to do is to run relic removal. Destroying relics is a good way to beat the relic decks. But considering the way that they're able to reduce the cost of things in their hand with Mobilize or something like Garen the Red, it's very easy, or not very easy, but it's very possible to deal those big swing damage turns all from hand. So if you want to add something like Guild Enforcer or Stormstress or anything with frontline creatures are probably better for countering this archetype than relic removal, since if the relic's in your hand, you can't destroy it with your Iron-Tooth Goblin, but they always have to deal with a Guild Enforcer regardless of if they're trying to burst you down from hand or not. So if you do end up seeing there's a lot of these, not aggro war decks, a lot of these relic war decks on the ladder, throw in some front lines in there to ruin their day. But that's about it for war. Let's jump into the next archetype. And next up we have Magic. This Magic list was made by Laser 159456, and this is sort of like an amalgamation Magic deck. Over the past couple of weeks, we've seen Tempo Magic, we've seen Control Magic, we've seen Combo Magic, and this sort of takes pieces from all 3 of those archetypes. We have the Double School Teacher from the combo decks, we have the Shape Blast and the Safeguard Incantations from the control decks, and then, of course, we have the 1-mana Spell Boost guys, the Demetrioses, the Unannounced Arrivals. Well, I guess Unannounced Arrival is just every Magic deck. It's amazing. But, you can see the very many tools that are usually run in the Tempo Magic list. These decks have been this style of Magic has been very popular this past week, and it makes a lot of sense. It seems like it can play like a true blue mid-range deck. With all of these different AoE tools, you have the Unbound Flames, you have the Unbound Flames, you have the Shape Blast, the Unannounced Arrivals, the Tracking Bolts. If you run into an aggressive matchup, you can definitely sit back and be the control deck. And if you're playing against a slower matchup, you can draw through your deck quickly, you can play creatures and apply pressure, and then, of course, deal 18 damage with your School Teachers, followed by Worm Breaths or an Epiphany or Lay Horde Hatchlings, whatever you want to do to finish the damage. And if anyone is uninitiated with the School Teacher stuff, School Teacher is a 1-mana 1/1. After you summon a 1-health creature, deal 2 damage to your opponent's god. So if you play 2 School Teachers, followed by 4 1-health creatures, you deal 18 damage to your opponent's face. Quick math says 18 is more than half. That's a lot of damage. And everyone knows that Magic has no trouble drawing through their deck. We have 2 copies of the Bibliomaniac for draw. We have those Safeguard incantations. We have Demetrios who can draw borderline indefinitely. We even have a copy of Epiphany in here. So this deck has, also Vortimer. Almost forgot about that. As well as a copy of Dimension Door. Like, filtering through your deck should be no problem at all. And you seem to have game no matter what you are forced to do. If you need to destroy your opponent all in one turn with Burst, very doable. If you need to clear your opponent's board over and over again, very doable. You don't have any giant creatures to threaten your opponent with, but you have lots of creatures that you can swarm your opponent with. So whatever you need to do, this style of Magic deck can do it. So if you're looking for a great deck this weekend and you don't want to play Deception, then this amalgamation mid-range Magic list could be a great choice for you. And next up, we have Amazon Nature. This list was made by the Sam Bam. And Amazon Nature is becoming way more popular in this past week. It's still up in the air if it's better than normal Wild Nature, but it's definitely new and therefore exciting. And there are some aspects of Amazon Nature that are very strong in this current meta. Most notably, Canopy Sniper, sort of. This is a card that is simultaneously great against Deception and horrible. So it is a 2-mana 1/3, and it reads, after a friendly Amazon attacks, deal 1 damage to a random enemy creature. Deception has lots of 1-health creatures, many of which are hidden, so dealing 1 damage to them randomly is insane. It's disgusting. It's game-winning. However, you may have noticed that Canopy Sniper has 1 attack, which means it can be stolen by Umbra Arrow very easily, and it can also be stolen by Bound by Her Will without any type of stat reduction stuff. And playing cards that can be Bound by Her Will against Deception is very risky. And on top of that, buffing your Canopy Sniper to a point where it can't be stolen happens much later in the game when you're playing something like Argmonian Onslaught or Morto's Daughter. However, Canopy Sniper in the early game, when your Deception opponent has their Shadow Lethanons up and their Shadow Step Backstabbers, it can be absolutely game-winning, incredibly powerful. Let's see, besides that, we have all of the Amazons. We have the Nightleaf Warrior, which is a 1-mana 2/2 with Hidden. Hidden is good because we're trying to buff our Amazons, and we've learned from Deception that hidden creatures are hard to interact with, so when stuff is hidden, you can buff them later. Let's see, we have the Barkswarm Trailmaker. This is a 1-mana 2/1 with Afterlife Summon an Amazon, so a 2/1 is obviously easy to remove, but hopefully its Afterlife sticks around so you can subsequently buff it up. Let's see, we have 2 copies of Underbrush Boar, which is a nature staple in general, but is extra important in this hidden creatures meta. Underbrush Boar is one of your best tools for dealing with any of Deception's early game creatures, including things like Patient Pickpocket. Let's see, a similar thing can be said for a card like Lightning Strike. Great for destroying Guild Enforcers, regardless of what god is playing them, or just good for destroying something hidden or big. Simple stuff like that. As far as Amazon synergies are concerned, we've already mentioned the Canopy Sniper, of course, but we also have 2 copies of Argmonian Onslaught, as well as 1 copy of Morto's Daughter. Argmonian Onslaught has been changed many, many times throughout the history of Gods Unchained. Its current iteration reads 5 mana, give +3 strength and Twin Strike to each of your friendly Amazons. So much weaker than its old +3/+2 variant, but still quite strong. Giving a bunch of your creatures Twin Strike is great for going face and clearing boards. One thing that I find a bit interesting is having 2 Argmonian Onslaughts and 1 Morto's Daughter. Usually I run 2 Mortos, 1 Argmonian. That being said, this nature deck does go a little bit wider, not nature, this Amazon deck goes a little bit wider than Amazon decks, of the past. And if you're unaware, Morto's Daughter is a 5-mana 2/2 with Blitz. You pick one effect. Give this creature +2/+2, making it a 5-mana 4/4 with Blitz, or give a random friendly Amazon +3/+5, and then this is just a 2/2 with Blitz. So giving something +4/+3, I think I said +4/+5, it's +4/+3 obviously, but giving something +4/+3 is very, very strong. Almost all your creatures, barring that aforementioned Underbrush Boar or Amazon, so it should be very, very easy to stick. And the final Amazon to go over is probably the most impactful. This is a card that was changed drastically during the core set refresh. in Nightleaf Prowler. It is a 6 mana 3/2, so far sounds horrible. It's hidden for 1 turn and has Roar, summon 2 more Nightleaf Prowlers. So for 6 mana, you get 3 bodies and a cumulative 9/6 in stats, and it's all hidden. So, just like we've talked about with a Nightleaf Prowler, we've learned from Deception, hidden creatures are hard to remove. This could be killed by a Crystal Rain, this could be killed by a Shape Blast, but if something like you're playing someone like Light or War post Carnage Sweep, they're going to have a very hard time removing something like Nightleaf Prowler, and then you can buff them with those Morto's Daughters, Argmonian Onslaughts, or even the single copy of Sudden Bloom in this deck, which pairs just so nicely with Nightleaf Prowler. You can pip into this on turn 5.5, go face with something, and then Sudden Bloom for tons of damage and like a full board clear essentially. So if you're looking for something fun and new and potentially strong, then Amazon Nature could be a great choice for you. Oh, actually, I almost forgot. One thing that I did want to add is this list does not run General Orthia, which I think could be a great choice in this list. General Orthia is a 7 mana 5/5 with Frontline, and it summons 2 1/1 Amazon recruits and then gives all of your Amazons +2/2 in Twin Strike. So it's another one of your big Amazon AoE buffs. It's also a big frontline creature, which could be relevant if those Relic War decks are prevalent, over the weekend ranked event, which they've been going up in popularity over the week, so we might be running into some big Relic decks over the weekend, so more big front lines could be very, very convenient. And then just besides that, when you look at the composition of the deck, you play, your early game plan of just playing lots of creatures. If your opponent clears those creatures off, you refill with Nightleaf Prowler, and then again with Nightleaf Prowler, and then you can follow up a third time with the General Orthia. So it just, you become very resilient with all of these single cards that create big boards. And if you are interested in adding General Orthia, in my opinion, I would remove Jersemi, as Amazons aren't really known for having high health totals, so giving them regen isn't the biggest deal in the world. Also, if you don't want to add General Orthia, it's no big deal. But either way, Amazon Nature has been doing pretty well this past week, and if you're looking for something fun and new to play over the weekend, then this could be a great list to go with. And next up, we have Death. Since the introduction of Mortal Judgment, we've been discussing primarily Anubian Death decks. However, Aldoc here was very successful playing classic Board Wipe Death last weekend. Since we haven't talked about Board Wipe Death in a long time, I'll go over a quick abridged version of what their game plan is. In the early game, they slow down the board state with sleep cards like Siren of the Graves, as well as creature burning cards like Sulfuric Rain. They have lots of healing and return to caves, as well as just a nibble to restore their health total after they've taken a lot of damage. Ideally, they're going to be using their Fanatics of Khatum, I've never actually read that, just the Fanatic to ramp up all the way. They are very capable of milling you with their Burrowing Scarabs, that aforementioned Sulfuric Rain, Cannabis Quarter to do it again, even V-Rock. And then as they get to the late game, they transition to very efficient board clears. We of course have the Apocalypse Now that just turns off anything. We have Neferu that kills anything with 3 or less health over and over again, provided you have 15 or less health. And then we have the Bifracturing Curse, which destroys either all odd-numbered creatures or all even-numbered creatures, which is a very powerful card, especially considering it's at 6 mana, making it easier for those Death players to survive long enough to play their Apocalypse Nows or demos. And then, of course, we have Jason in here in case it's a control matchup and you need to have extra value to beat your opponent. But most of the time, you'll just be running them out of resources or milling them, but Jason is also very powerful. The main reason I wanted to discuss this deck is Aldoc made the huge brain play of adding Lost Hope to his Board Wipe Death deck. This is a Mortal Judgment card. It hasn't really seen any play until this week. It's a 3-mana spell, gives -1/-1 to each creature in your opponent's hand. If that would set that creature's health to 0, you obliterate that card. So Aggro Deception is the most popular archetype, and they run a lot of 1-health creatures. On top of that, one of Death's weaker archetypes would be something like a School Teacher Magic, and this also removes all School Teachers from your opponent's hand. But it's most impactful in that Deception matchup. So let's just reopen the Deception deck we were looking at before. And if you count through this deck, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I'm not going to count this, 10, 12, 14, this makes creatures, but 14 naturally occurring creatures with 1 health, And then stuff like Shadow Step Backstabber, Beguiling Blade, those all make 1 health creatures to go into the hand. So at least 14 cards. It's very reasonable for, if you are playing as Board Wipe Death, your opponent drops a Fermentari Instigator, draws a whole bunch of cards, you play Lost Hope, and essentially just force them to discard a lot of cards from their hand. Lost Hope is going to be absolutely key in those Deception matchups, and Deception is going to be very, very prevalent. So if you enjoy playing Board Wipe Death, if you have the collection to make Board Wipe Death, and you've been missing it, all you need is a Lost Hope, maybe 2 Lost Hopes, and your matchup against Deception is going to absolutely skyrocket. So if you've been missing Board Wipe Death, this could be the week for you. Alright, and the last god to go over is Light. This is a control light list made by Ryan. It's the exact same list we showed off last week and the exact same list we showed off the week before. Ryan here has made quite a good control light list. He is very consistent with it. I'm not going to go over it in great detail because we've been going over it for the past month and it's pretty complicated. But if you are interested in this archetype, Ryan here streams his weekend ranked games every week on Twitch. His Twitch username is the same as it is here, RYHAN. So if you want to see this deck in action, follow him on Twitch, check out his gameplay footage. But he has proven time and time again that this control light archetype is quite strong in this current meta. The main cards to note against like Deception, the main archetype to beat, is we have cards like the Eclipse, which destroys all those 1 health creatures that we've been harping on this entire video. Light's Levy as well as New Light's Levy are very strong against all those little creatures. Line in the Sand for some super sleep. Lips Are Sealed to turn off those like big buffed up creatures from Dark Knives and Guildmates and Ludians, Thespians, whatever. It's relatively simple. It's does control stuff, it survives, and then it has big value turns with Inescapable Duty as well as Radiant Bomber. We have our 1 copy of Demo in here, and although it looks like there's 1 copy of Demo, you can bring it back indefinitely with that Duty and Bomber loop. We of course have Helmna, which is a great frontline creature, some great healing. Frontline might be more important this weekend if War becomes more popular. And on that same note, we have a copy of Guild Enforcer in here, also just getting into the way of all of those War opponents, and also just successfully getting in the way of any like aggressive nature opponent or light opponent. So just like we've seen last week and the week before, this control light archetype is quite powerful. So if you like some slow light, this list is definitely the list for you. But now let's just take a quick look at a more aggressive light list. I don't want to talk about this list in particular. I just want to talk about Valkaz, Master of Pain, as well as Kaya, Conduit of the Gods. If you're a fan of this series, that you know that I've talked about these 2 cards in light many, many times. I just want to reiterate, this Valkaz, Master of Pain is one of the few ways light can kill lots of 1 health creatures at one time. There's a lot of 1 health creatures in the meta, not just Deception. All Echo cards have 1 health. But Deception is the most popular god, and they have lots of 1 health things. So you're going to want a way to deal with all those 1 health creatures, and Valkaz, Master of Pain can do it. Kaya, Conduit of the Gods, can do it as well, although she's not as consistent as Valkaz. So if you want to play a faster light list, you're probably going to want to add something that can deal with all those 1 health creatures, and you're not going to want to use the Eclipse, because Eclipse hurts your creatures as well. So if you want aggro light, definitely think about those Masters of Pains and those Conduits of the Gods. Alright, so it is conclusion time. We thought, we talked, what should we play this weekend ranked in Gods Unchained? Well, the answer is obvious. Aggro Deception. It's the best archetype. It's been the best archetype. You win your games quickly. It's good against pretty much everything. Aggro Deception is super good. You should probably play it. But whatever you go with, make sure you have fun. Tell us how you did in the TST Discord and have a wonderful day. Hey, you! Did you know that subscribing to the TST YouTube channel will increase your win rate by 6.9%? So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. And while you're at it, equip Scythe of the Harvest and attack the like button directly in the face. Bye-bye!